I want to tell you a short story to begin with, which is goes back to 2004 in September. And here in Panama on Avenida Balboa, there used to be a place called Café. Maybe some people remember it. And in September, an arrest was made there. There was a man called Tom McMurrin, and as soon as he got off from his table, the agents from the Panamanian PTJ, the police, came in and they arrested him. And they brought him to the PTJ Center in Ancon. He sat there for a week or 2 weeks, and then he was extradited to the United States, where he was from, and thrown in jail after sentencing for a couple of years for fraud and money laundering. And Mr. McMurrin's troubles in Panama began when I wrote a couple of articles about his activities in Bocas del Toro a year before that. And what he was doing there in Bocas del Toro was he was selling land, and he promised his clients that he would plant the land with teak trees and noni fruit, and then the trees and the fruit would be harvested and sold, and everybody would get rich and make a lot of money. The only problem with that was that the land he was selling, he didn't own. And as soon as he had sold it, he didn't plant any trees on it or any noni on it. He did absolutely nothing. And how did I know that? I knew that because I had for quite a lot of time access to all their email traffic. In fact, I read their emails before they did. And that went on for quite a bit of time, and I wrote these stories in an online publication called the Panama News. So when he was finally arrested, that was a great relief. And the curious thing was that the Panamanians, despite numerous complaints that had been filed by people who lost a lot of money, never investigated. And I asked the Attorney General at the time the question, why did you not investigate? And that was José Antonio Sosa at the time. Maybe some people remember him. And he said, well, it's gringos ripping off gringos, and we don't care. What he did do was, because Mr. McMurrin was obviously not very happy with me exposing his activities online in the Panama News, and he filed a criminal complaint for crimes against his honor. That's what it's called here in Panama. If you libel somebody or you slander somebody, then you commit a crime against somebody's honor. It's a criminal affair, and you can file a complaint, and then the prosecutors will look at it and they will prosecute it. So, as much as the public ministry did not investigate the criminal activities of Mr. McMurrin, as active they became prosecuting me and the publisher of the Panama News for these crimes against Mr. McMurrin's honor. And that was quite odd, because there was such an obvious contradiction between the two things, and it was so clear to everybody who would observe from the outside that it should have been in reverse. And that's what I would like to talk about a little bit today, because what if it was in reverse? What if Panama would not be a country where a person like McMurrin could hide his money, could hide himself because he was already a wanted man when he got here? But what if Panama instead became a country that became a safe haven for journalism, for free speech, for information, and for the protection of data? For Panama, this would be quite a revolutionary idea, to turn it into a free zone, a safe haven for information and for free speech. But as revolutionary as it might be for Panama, it's not exactly new. Actually, if you go back 200 years, there was a character here called Simón Bolívar, and he already believed that Panama should be a place that would serve the free exchange of ideas, debate, political debate, for the Gran Colombia that he was trying to establish. Another version of the idea, not so much for Panama, was when a company tried on an abandoned artillery platform off the coast of England to establish a free data zone with computer servers and cables that would connect it to the mainland That didn't really work out because of obvious practical problems, but also because somebody who owned the platform had decided to make it into an independent country, and the Brits didn't quite agree. So that was the second attempt. A more serious attempt came more recently in Iceland, where since 2010 press freedom people and journalists and media owners have been working on what they call the Icelandic New Media Initiative. It is a plan that in which these people have searched the world for the best and most advantageous data protection and press freedom laws, and mop them all together and turn them into a package that has since been passed by the Assembly but not implemented, to make Iceland the most advanced free speech and data protection haven in the world. From Iceland is actually the most advanced initiative, even though it's not being fully implemented, from where we can learn what a free speech haven and a free data haven would entail. The question is, do we really need those initiatives? Because, you know, online is a kind of invisible to many people. It's something you see on a screen of your phone or your iPad or the computer. And for a lot of people, it doesn't represent a different world. So Press Freedom Day was here earlier this month. And Al Jazeera took a report from the Committee for the Protection of Journalists, and they turned it into a quiz on their website. And one of the questions they asked, and I need to do this precise, was that more than half of 211 globally imprisoned journalists use the same medium. Which one? So there's 211 journalists now in jail. More than half of them work for one particular medium. So you can choose between radio, TV, online, or print. So who thinks radio? Print. Nobody. Print. Who thinks print? Print is big. Print is important. Only a couple of people. Television. Only one. Online. Yeah, you knew where I was going with this, right? 106 of those 211 journalists are in jail because they work and publish online. So the internet is the most dangerous environment for journalists to work in, and not only for journalists, because this is a quiz that was about journalism, but it's obvious, and we know that from the news we receive, that there are also people being jailed who just publish something on Facebook, or they sent a tweet that the authorities don't like, or they put something on a blog that the narcos in Mexico don't like. And it's not just the threat of imprisonment and assassination, if you want. It's also things like censorship. I was in Syria in December of last year, reporting on the war there, and it was impossible. I was staying in a very nice hotel, and it was impossible to upload any pictures anywhere. I could not send pictures to the magazine I was working for, to my friends. I could not upload them to Flickr. It was impossible. I was also afraid to, and I didn't do it, to send the articles I was writing from Damascus to my publisher at that time in the United States, because I knew people would read it on the way over. And I didn't want to become one of the many journalists who had been disappeared since the war started there. And for censorship, you don't have to go as far as Syria. We can stay right here in Panama. Because over a year and a half ago, more or less, I found that my websites had all disappeared. I tried to visit my Panama blog, my own personal website, photography blog that I have, and I couldn't access them anymore. And what had happened was that the story about Mr. McMurray and his teak trees and his noni fruit has since repeated itself a couple of times in this country, only with different players. And this time it was a Canadian career criminal who didn't like what I had to say about him. And he filed a complaint because I had committed crimes against his honor. And a judge agreed with that and said that the offending article had to be removed from the web. So I appealed that decision, but the lawyer of my Canadian friend had meanwhile taken it upon him to write my web host in Germany, and he attached the decision of the Panamanian court that I had appealed, saying that it represented a court order to take all my websites down. Now the Germans apologized later and it was all a big misunderstanding, but by then I had of course moved my website somewhere else already, to Iceland to be precise. This kind of cat and mouse games, and there are many such cases, that shows that we need the kind of safe havens where we can online, where we can host our websites, protect our free speech, exercise a free press, and store data that we need to store securely, and where we can make information available. So another good reason is that a few people paid attention recently to another one of those criminal libel complaints here in Panama. This time it involved two of my fellow countrymen, two Dutchmen and one Israeli citizen. The Dutchmen, they lived in, the one lived in Costa Rica and the other one lives in Israel together with the Israeli citizen. So none of them were Panamanian and none of them lived in Panama. And they filed a complaint here in Panama against an American magazine called the Christian Science Monitor. I'm sure most people will have heard of it. And against a journalist who works for that magazine, who is also American and lives in Mexico City. And the story was about, that they published and that the three people took offense with, was about a criminal or a scammy carbon trading scheme that these people were running out of London. So why was this case in Panama? The only relationship with Panama was that the trees that were going to absorb the carbon were grown near Chapo here in Panama. But the trees weren't offended and they didn't file the complaint. At least not as far as we know. Even though there was not any clear link with Panama, the judge and the prosecutor's office accepted the case as if it was totally logical that it would be treated here in Panama. And that is a phenomenon that is known as, it's called libel tourism. That is people who feel offended, shop for a jurisdiction that will take their case, no matter where it is, and where it's easy to get a conviction. And Panama offers this service to anyone who wants it, anywhere in the world, free of charge. You can come here, you file, you go to the Centro de Denuncias in Ancon. There are very nice people there, they'll help you write down the complaint, all for free. And then they will send it to the prosecutor, and the prosecutor will look at it, and chances are that they will take it and spend a gazillion amount of money on translations and getting the case to court and couriers and copies and getting statements, and then the judge will accept it and they will try to serve the people. And that is probably not a situation we should want in this country, because it's being paid by taxpayers, by you. So that people can come here and file criminal complaints against journalists anywhere in the world. Because I happen to live here in Panama, so if it happens with me, then I'm pretty much, chances are I'll be aware of it. But if it happens to somebody like in this case, who lives in Mexico City and is a US journalist, they might go as far as put you on the Interpol watch list. So next time she takes a plane out of Mexico City, she'll be stopped and say, you're on the watch list. They need you in Panama for you because you've committed a crime, apparently. And Panama is a favorable place to do something like that, to establish a free zone for data and speech. Why? Because we already have the canal, which is neutral. It's a place where ships, where world transit passes through. We make no difference between where the ships come from, who they serve, what they are about to do. If it's a military ship, if it's a commercial vessel, if it's a pleasure yacht, it doesn't matter. Everything can go through. So we have this tradition already in Panama with shipping. We have it also with commerce in the Colon Free Zone, for example. So that's the kind of situation we want for data, because if we can protect shipping and the integrity of world commerce, and we can protect the integrity of trade through the Colon Free Zone, or in Howard where you have a special economic zone, then why can't we protect speech and data like that? But for that, couple of things need to change. And the first one is obviously that the criminal libel laws in this country need to go. It also means that you should not have just not interference, but it also means that you need to have active protection of the people who use it. I can't even recount how many times I have been threatened myself, but also that sources, you know, people who you work with, they trust you to keep them safe or that you keep their identity safe. And then they're being threatened or harassed or even physically assaulted. And I've had that a couple of times, and you go to the police and you go to the corregidor and nothing happens. They offer no protection whatsoever. Then there are a couple of smaller suggestions, things we could learn from Iceland, from their project. One of them being that there has to be a better protection of whistleblowers, which is also not very well arranged for here in Panama. Another one was that you protect intermediaries. That means that you can't, for example, sue Cable Onda because they host a website that you don't like. I mean, nobody wants to do business anymore if that is possible. And in Panama, that is possible to do that. A better freedom of information regime. Speaking of which, since Snowden, we know that data is under threat. And that is another reason that Panama should take this idea seriously, because Brazil is already working on legislation to protect internet freedom and publishing better, and so is Europe. And I think that is important for Panama as well, to protect not just free speech, but also its own independence and integrity of its data. Thank you very much.